it is remarkable the progress that we've been able to make, as you've said, with the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine after our conference in Skopje last December. And we've, of course, since then had conferences in London on the 13th of May at the House of Commons that was supported by Alex Sobel, the Labour MP and chair of the all-party parliamentary group in the House of Commons on Ukraine, and by Lord James Arbuthnot, who is a Conservative, Alex is Labour, from the House of Lords and a former Conservative Defence Minister and Chairman of the Defence Select Committee. And of course, last week we were in Rome together with you, Xabier, and with the help of Emanuele Arricchiello, who will be speaking to us later this evening, from the Centro Studi Internazionali, our Italian partners, for a conference in Rome, where we had the contributions from think tanks and many others, but crucially from Senator Filippo Sensi, who is a senator from the centre-left, and Emanuele Lopefido, who is an MP from the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, and from the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Italian Parliament as well. Because just to remind our audience, and all of you here in Skopje and also those watching at home, the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine is primarily a network of networks, actually. A network primarily of parliamentarians from the E5 countries, that's Britain, France, Germany, Italy and Poland, those countries within the coalition of the willing, the coalition of 31 countries that was set up by Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and President Emmanuel Macron in January to support Ukraine now and in the future, and in particular to step up the economic and security, in particular military and security capability and capacities, but also, as we'll be hearing later on, there needs to be other dimensions to that support as well, including a cultural dimension, which we'll be hearing about. But we're also a coalition we're also a network of journalists, and we had an event in Karpacz at the Economic Forum in Poland, where we focused on media freedom in Eastern and Central Europe, and we will be having events over the coming months in France with our partners, the Jean Monnet Association, and also in Germany. And I think one of the most powerful impacts of our initiative so far are indeed, Xabier, as you've just asked me to comment on, the lessons learned, because I think all of us, many of us in this room, certainly you, Xabier, many of our speakers this evening, and Dr. Wolfgang Reisman next to us, have been with Ukraine right from the days of Maidan, and before Oliver Vidlin, who we're going to hear from, was actually on the Maidan 2014. And we've been engaged with this issue and supporting Ukraine for a long time. But what strikes me about the engagement that I've had with Westminster Alliance for Ukraine is that I'm constantly learning new things and new insights. And so I just very briefly, in a couple of minutes, I just want to outline some of the lessons that learned as I see it from the conference that we've done. I think the most important lesson is that all of us at this conference today, we know the danger from Russia. We know the danger in Ukraine and the danger to Europe. We don't need to be woken up to the danger of Russia, to Ukraine, and to the future of Europe. But I think one of the lessons learned is that our societies do. Our societies, our publics are not aware of how grave and how serious and how imminent the danger is. And so, and in fact, also many MPs, many people in Parliament. And so part of our job, I think, is to try and wake people up to the reality of this threat and to what we can, each of us, do. None of us must think that any contribution of any expression of solidarity for Ukraine is too small. It means so much to the people of Ukraine. I often say to friends in Ukraine, well, we wish we could do more. And they say, no, what you're doing means so much to us. The smallest gesture of solidarity means so much. And we try to do much more than that, of course. But even the smallest gesture of solidarity means a great deal. The second lesson, I think, is we must understand that the war in Ukraine doesn't stop at the borders of Ukraine. This is hybrid warfare. That means the borders of Ukraine are porous, and the type of warfare that experiencing the cyber attacks go well beyond the borders of Ukraine and into our societies here. The attempts to manipulate through social media and through other means what is in the minds and hearts of all of us, not just those of us in Ukraine, is very systematic and very pervasive and very damaging. And so this is a hybrid war, and we need to understand that the war had started. The war is already here. That hybrid aspect is here already. I think a third lesson learned is that we need to inject a sense of urgency. Now, I don't think I want to say that we're going to find ourselves in Western Europe in a war with Russia tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but we have to take the threat seriously, and we have to prepare. We have to prepare for that, and we are not prepared, and we don't know how much time we have. But we do know that we're not prepared, and we need to inject a sense of urgency into our preparations because we are not ready. And I think the fourth lesson is we shouldn't leave it just to governments. It's very good that Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron and 31 countries have come together in the coalition of the willing. But there's an enormous gap between the ambitions that they set out and the actual practical reality of the situation. And I think part of the work that we can do in Westminster Alliance is to focus on the practical work that needs to be done to actually make a reality of the ambition of the coalition of the willing. One of the things will be to step up defence spending in Europe. And as we heard from the German Minister for European Affairs, Günther Kirchbaum, who we were with on Friday in Rome, Germany, one of the countries of the E5, has had 3 years of recession. How are we going to get European publics in Germany and elsewhere to accept that we need to spend more money on defence when they want more money spent on public services like education and health? We need to cooperate. Emmanuel Lopez-Ferrido from the conference we had last week said this is absolutely, none of us can do this on our own. There is a strong need to cooperate. And I think the sixth lesson, and this is, I think, something that I really want to emphasize, is it's not just about supporting Ukraine, it's also about learning from Ukraine. Yeah? How is it possible that a country like Ukraine, that was in the situation it was in 3 years ago, has been able to survive 3 years of invasion from Russia? What can we learn from the experience of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people from that about human resilience, apart from anything else? That we have so much to learn from the experience of Ukraine, and we're going to need that. We're going to need that in Europe for when the threat comes to us. And as I've just said, in many ways, it's already there. And I think we also have learnt about the depth of emotional and psychological trauma in the population of Ukraine and how that needs to be addressed as well. The coalition of the willing is about not just about standing up to Russia now and making sure that Ukraine that Ukraine does not fall. It's also about the reconstruction of Ukraine and the future of Ukraine. And the future, when we're talking about the future of Ukraine, we're talking about the future of Ukrainian people. And we need to recognize the level of trauma and psychological damage and stress in the people of Ukraine, and that is going to need to be addressed. And the First Lady of Ukraine spoke very powerfully about that at the Ukraine Recovery Conference, and we were able to engage with that through Alex Sobel, who was attending, and I was at the ambassador's reception on the eve of it, about the need to, if we want to build Ukraine, we need to rebuild the Ukrainian people, and I think that needs to be a focus of our work. And, you know, this is also, we've also learned that this is my lesson number 8, that we need to understand that the future of Ukraine, we can start to see the contours of the future of Ukraine now. If we think about the Second World War and the post-war settlement, that didn't arrive after the Second World War had ended. That was in preparation during the Second World War. And the new Ukraine is being prepared, even as people stand and give up their lives and livelihoods in standing up to the Russian aggression and the Russian invasion. And we can be part of that conversation, and we need to be part of that conversation. And my lesson number 9 my lesson number 9 is that we have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe that we are strong enough if we stand together to stand up to the Russian invasion, the Russian and the Russian attack. And we need to remember that, as I said at the beginning, that President Putin isn't just interested in taking over the territory of Ukraine. He wants to erase the love of freedom and democracy in the hearts of the Ukrainian people. And if he got the chance, he would erase it from our hearts as well. And so this is really very much a fight not just for territory, but also for our identity and our values. And these are values, and this is an identity that I think is very widely shared, not just in Ukraine. And that's my lesson number 9. And that brings me to my lesson number 10, that I don't think we can, one of the things that we have learned from the activities so far of the Westminster Alliance for Ukraine, as you can see, it's a lot, and I could go on, but I don't have time, so I've limited myself to 10 lessons. The future of Ukraine is the future of Europe. If we lose the fight for the future of Ukraine, we lose the fight for the future of Europe. And as I've said, it's a hybrid warfare. It's not just something that stops at the borders of Ukraine. And we've seen this recently in Moldova, the attempt by the Russians to interfere in the election in Moldova. But we've also seen that in Moldova, if we do stand together, if we do believe in ourselves, if we do affirm and assert our right to be free and to defend our democracy, we can stand up to this kind of hybrid warfare. And that was not the result that Putin wanted from the election in Moldova. And I think that brings me nicely to our next speaker, my colleague, Dr. Wolfgang Reisman, from the chair of the European People's Forum and Media Dialogue, to say something to us about that aspect, and in particular, as we're here in the Balkans, how the hybrid warfare is affecting us here.